The 2024-25 school year was a special one for Anthony Wayne Athletics. 3 Generals coaches taking home State Coach of the Year honors, and we have all 3 here in studio for a discussion on winning habits, coaching philosophy, and more. We have baseball head coach Ryan Donley, volleyball head coach Chrissy Graven, and girls soccer head coach Lori Williams. Guys, I know it's probably hard to get all of you in the same place at the same time for something that isn't Anthony Wayne related, so I appreciate you guys so much for taking the time.
Sure thing.
No problem.
So I want to begin with kind of setting the stage as far as how the year went for all of you. All 3 of your teams winning at least 85% of your games or more, each of you winning an NLL title. So Coach Williams, I want to start with you and kind of the overview of your experience at Anthony Wayne. What defines excellence at Anthony Wayne?
Excellence, it starts in the community and in the classroom, and then that just rolls right into the athletic fields, in my opinion. We have a really high-achieving group of student athletes that are very committed to their craft, whether it be in the classroom or whether it be on the field. And to me, excellence is kind of defined by each individual and what they can bring to the greater good.
And to that point, Coach Graven, your volleyball team is going for 3 straight league titles. Last time you guys did that was from 2000 to 2002. I'm curious if you remember who the second team All-Ohio player was on those Anthony Wayne squads. Do you know? It was you.
Maybe it rings a bell.
So you're used to the high standard and the high bar. So how have you seen that standard develop from your time as a player to now coaching at Anthony Wayne?
Gosh, the game has evolved a lot over those years. Players are more powerful, they're more explosive, they're more skilled. I think there's a lot more development that happens now, more so than the 20 years ago that we had that run in the NLL. But yeah, I think there's a lot more focus. We just know more about the sport and how to train excellence. Back to your question, that we've seen that play over the last few years in our program.
And Coach Donley, you coming in before the 2022 season, replacing a legend in Mark Nell, the fact that he was able to build this Anthony Wayne program up into a powerhouse, how much pressure was there not only to replace such a revered coach, but uphold the standard that came with the program?
Honestly, I didn't feel pressure at all. The support system that we have in place, Anthony Wayne's a big baseball community, and really I wouldn't define it as pressure, more of an opportunity. And so I have a lot of respect for Coach Nell. I get asked that question a lot. But I think that he laid a foundation through the baseball, junior generals and everything like that. And it kind of trickles up into the high school, but like this year, all of our kids came through with the staff that we have now. This senior class was freshmen when we took over, and so we're really proud of the success they've had and the buy-in that they've displayed. And no, I don't think when you're doing it the right way, I don't think pressure is the word I would choose. It's more of an opportunity, and I'm really proud of our kids and coaches in the school community, everybody for the buy-in that we've seen to allow us to do the things we've done.
And as I mentioned, all of you have winning cultures, and something that UConn women's basketball coach Gina Auriemma said that was very profound is the only thing worse than losing is winning all the time, because it can be very intoxicating. At some point, maybe you or your players start defining yourselves by your wins or losses. So Coach Williams, I'll start with you on this one. How do you prevent your players from making losing an affront for who they are as people?
Yeah, we use a kind of moniker that there's winning and there's learning. And so no matter what the game is, no matter what the situation is that we can always learn from our mistakes, whether we're winning or, the scoreboard doesn't necessarily go in our favor. And so we're big believers in, it's a process, it's a long season, it's a grind. We kind of embrace that, in my opinion. The girls really like the schedule that we set up is very difficult. So we purposely put them in situations to try and see how they step up to different challenges. And I'm astonished every year that they continue to find new and unique ways to accomplish those.
And Coach Graven, I'm interested to hear your take on this, because when I spoke to Coach Donley before the state Final Four, he said that making it to that point and losing at that point in 2023 showed the team that it isn't just satisfied with getting there. So for you, seeing that you lost a state title game this past year, how do you think the feeling of just winning a regular season game or maybe just winning another league title will alter, knowing that from this past year, you can make it even further and potentially even win a state title?
Absolutely. I think the perspective our girls take is, it's great to win the NLL, but it's more so what's after, and I think, honestly, with our program, that was a big roadblock that we had for so many years was, we struggled in tournament play. And now that we kind of broke through that barrier and made it all the way to the final game, we've got that taste in our mouth to know what to expect, and the girls are already talking about, it's our revenge tour, and unfinished business, and getting back to that final game. So absolutely, you know what it takes to get there, and you want to replicate that and finish the job, and yeah, that mentality matters.
And all of you have experience in those tough state titles, state semifinal, regional championship games, losing in them. So, Coach Graven, I'll start with you on this one. What did that loss teach you as a coach?
It's a game. To compete and show up and give it your all. I think there's, you prepare as hard as you can, and believe in your girls, and things fall your way and some things don't, but I think it's, like what Coach Williams said, it's a process, it's a journey. How do we respond? And I think the girls were hurt and disappointed, but at the end of the day, we came back to the school and we didn't want to leave, because it was almost like the feeling of if we left that charter bus, after it dropped us off, then we were closing that book on that chapter, and the girls didn't want to leave, and that just, the whole experience we had last year, the journey, the process, to me, that spoke more than anything as a coach and as a team. So, getting to that final game and losing in a heartbreaking way that we did, it just teaches you life. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but the girls are very connected, and they stayed together as a unit. So super proud of how they responded.
Coach Williams, for you, how do those type of losses make you a better coach?
I think you learn, again, you learn something from every, situation that you put yourself in and you put your team in. You see the resolve, you see how sports are just a reflection of what is able to happen later in life, and you see students be able to overcome obstacles. It is ultimately a game. The sun came up the next day after we lost the state championship. It hurt a lot, but it also left a sour taste, as Coach Graven said. And we want to make sure that we do everything with detail-oriented and make sure that sometimes the ball's not going to go your way, but everything that is in our control, we want to be able to control and take care of what we can.
And one thing that's great about Anthony Wynn Athletics, year after year, you're pumping out talent. All of you have junior generals. You're putting these kids through the system really before they get to high school, in some cases before they even get to middle school. Coach Donley, when you're telling somebody, here's what it takes to be an Anthony Wynn general, what are you telling them?
I would say three things: play hard, play fast, have fun. If they do those three things, they'll give themselves a chance. I don't believe that kids need to play 60-something games in the summer at 8U if they want to be a high school player. I don't think that that's something that needs to happen. I think that there's a healthy balance of kids being involved, introducing them to sport, teaching them the fundamentals, allowing them to have fun, but also allowing them to be kids so that they're not burnt out by the time they get to us, that they're still hungry to perform and to get better. And that's one thing that I think our Junior Generals program does a really nice job of, is taking a community-based approach and developing those kids to love the game first. And then we work together with them. We meet often with our high school staff down all the way to 8U and try to be on the same page. And I think that playing hard, playing fast, and having fun are kind of the three things that we hang our hat on, and it's really worked for us.
Coach Graven, what does building habits look like, or building winning habits look like for volleyball?
I think connecting our high school players that are putting in the work and showing and just being good role models for our youth players. Honestly, I think that's the biggest way to connect, close the gap from the perspective that our youth players have when they're looking up at our high school players, of what it takes to work hard and be successful. And our high school girls do an amazing job engaging with our youth rec league players and during our camps as well. And I mean, I remember that going through junior generals myself, growing up through the years, and what the impact made on me. And so I know that it makes a difference, and that's going to motivate and encourage those youth players to emulate what they're seeing in our high school girls. So you don't know the impact that you're making as a high school kid, engaging with 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th graders, but you are. I mean, even if it's just a high five or a word of encouragement, and that's going to stay with those youth players for years down the road.
And all of you spoke about the process. It takes time to get there. And I want to put up a diagram here just that measures the process versus the results. In the top left, you have the process going well and the result maybe not going your way. To the right of that, you have the result going your way and the process. Below that, you have the process not going your way, but the result goes as planned. And then to the left of that, everything hits the fan. So anybody could chime in here. When you look at this diagram, which quadrant would you guys say you indulge yourself most in as a coach?
I personally think you have to be in all 4 quadrants in order to build resiliency and to get where you need to be. Obviously, to me, it's a balancing act. You can't be all in one quadrant, because if you're not challenging them, then when they get to more difficult opponents, more difficult challenges, they won't be prepared for it. And so I think it has to be kind of a balance of all of them.
Coach Donley?
I completely agree with what Coach Williams said. We did the same thing. We bolstered our schedule this past year, and we played a very, very difficult and challenging schedule, and we reaped the benefits of it down the stretch. One thing that I do think is very important is people say trust the process, but I think that another part of that is to communicate the process with players. And as coaches, I think that that's what, at least with our program, what we try to do is to lay it out for them. So it's hard to ask a kid to trust the process when they don't know what the process is. So we communicate with them. We let them know what is expected, where they stand, all of those things. I mean, heck, I had this conversation a week ago in my own house with my daughter. So it's understanding where they're at and then trusting that and buying into it of something bigger than themselves. But I agree with Coach Williams. You have to live a little bit in all 4 quadrants, because where there's failure, there's growth. And so we preach that, but ultimately you want to get in the top right quadrant, obviously, and trusting the process and then having the result that you want. But winning is hard. It doesn't come easy. And the Northern Lakes League is as good as it gets. And so there's no freebies. And so you're going to stumble. Your response to that's super important. And then that's where, when you communicate the process of what is our goals, not only individually, but as a team, and you communicate that with each individual kid, they'll run through a wall for you. And that's what we try to do. And
as someone who achieved the ultimate goal of winning a state title, when did you know you had the trust of your team?
Very early on with this group. I think that there was a belief based on our failure in 23. I think a lot of those kids saw that, and I think that they had a hunger. But in the fall, when we started our open fields, there was just their intent and the way they went about things. It wasn't just to be there. There was a large amount of intent in what we did, and we talked to our parents even about finding a way to impact every situation in a positive manner. Whether you're playing well, whether you're a good teammate, or whatever, find a way to impact this moment in a positive way. And our kids really did that starting in September. I'm really proud of them, and I think that that's ultimately what led to us winning. They were close, the buy-in was huge, but they did things with intent and a belief that was unmatched. And so, yeah, I'm really proud of them.
And Coach Graven, the way your team, that regular season was as good as any, 24 out of 25 of your wins, you only lost 1 or fewer sets. Mm-hmm. How do you manage expectations while also fighting complacency?
Yeah, we obviously were very successful in our regular season, so we hadn't played in a 5-set match. So to prepare for the tournament play going into regionals and state, we added some really competitive scrimmages and practiced playing a 5-set match and having our girls go through that. And ultimately, we ended up playing 5-set matches in our last 2 games. And, like Coach Williams says, putting them in situations to see how they respond. It's an hour and a half, 2-hour game at that level, and a lot of jumping and explosiveness happens. But putting them in environments where to see how they respond. Because otherwise they're just beating everybody pretty easily 3-0, and that's the expectation. So they're not really being challenged and pushed. And so that's what we did last year. I thought it was helpful to see different teams that we typically don't see year over year, and we'll expect to do the same this year.
And that's one thing I wanted to touch on. This past school year was kind of the first introduction of the new division systems. All of your playoff paths looked much different than in years past. Coach Williams, how did that impact the preparation of your squad?
The biggest part was there was no sectional games, so we had to figure out what to do with a week and a half before we played our first playoff game from our last scheduled game till when we started. So, the coaching community is very close, and so I reached out to a friend over in Strongsville, and we ended up setting up a scrimmage midweek, so we would replicate having to travel on a school night, on turf, late night, trying to replicate that during sectional week so that when we got to outside of the district, if we were blessed enough to get there, that we would be ready for that and that we would have had seen what we could potentially do there. Just the actual format, let alone some of the teams, changed for us. And so we just had to look at it big picture and where do we want to go and, what was going to be our possible best path. You never really know if it was the best path, but you try and make your best educated decision of where to go. And we're really big on getting feedback from the girls of what they want to do and having those communications that Coach Donley kind of communicated about.
How important is it for you guys to have that two-way feedback? Because so much of it is you're getting on the players, trying to get them to buy in, as Coach Donley said, to the expectation and the standard. But what is it about the players that allow you to grow as a coach when they're giving you feedback on how things should go?
Yeah, one thing that we say, which I don't know if it sounds bad or not, we tell them you have a voice, but you don't have a say. There's a big difference between the two.
My mom has told me that a few times.
So we do listen to their voice, but at the end of the day, as coaches, we make the decision based on what's best for the program moving forward, not one individual kid or whatever. We look at the whole thing and then try to make it the best decision we can. And I'm sure sometimes we'll screw it up, other times we'll get it right. But yeah, we listen to our kids, we talk to them, but just because they have a voice doesn't mean they have a say.
And on the lines of engineering feedback, Coach Graven, when is the right time to get on a player? Is it when they already had a bad game and their head's already low, or is it when they're at their peak and they know there's something they can do better? When is the right time to give that constructive criticism to a player?
Yeah, I mean, and going back to your previous diagram, we do a lot of mindset training and positive self-talk training, especially with females and social media and whatnot, responding after an error and not necessarily having an effect the entire rest of the game, but being able to bounce back in that retrospect. But I think anymore, players don't necessarily need to be critiqued. They want constant feedback of what are you doing right and what could you have done better, but not necessarily. I feel like the players that we've seen go through our program the past few years aren't necessarily ones that you need to really yell at or get on. They a lot of times are just asking for what can I do to get better, and they want that feedback in a kind way and be coached in that manner. But I think they're just used to constantly receiving feedback, which is different than my style. My style is go out there and play and figure it out as a unit. That's your family out there, but so that's something that I'm learning, and you learn every year based on what the players need and how they communicate feedback that you get. So I would say after a great play or a not so great play, I think you can give some sort of feedback, positive or constructive.
I think it's super important too, Yaw, that it depends on the student, right? So some people need more constant feedback, and when they're down, they need built up, and some people, when they're up, they need, hey, you could also improve X, Y, Z. So I think, one of my favorite things to do as a coach is to watch other coaches. So I watch Coach Bungard, I watch these two. We have some absolutely incredible coaches that we're lucky enough to work with at Anthony Wayne, with working so close with Coach Billings on the boys' side, and just watching how coaches coach different students differently, and that's okay in my opinion, because everybody needs something a little bit differently.
And especially around playoff time, there's so much that you guys have to do that maybe doesn't actually have to do with the sport. Submitting rosters, submitting team photos, making sure the results are on point. Assistant coaches, so huge to what you guys do. They almost make the easy things look easy and make the hard things look easy, and thus make your job easy. How important is it to have the right group of assistant coaches with you guys on the sidelines in order to reach that ultimate goal?
It's everything.
It's everything.
It's literally
100%.
The thing that we, like I mentioned earlier, that we told our kids about, accepting role that we ask them to do in doing, reps over a label kind of thing. And same thing with coaches. I mean, as we're human beings, and sometimes, everybody wants to be in the dugout for a varsity game or a state tournament run, but you're only allowed so many roster spots. And so, we've met with our coaches and talked to them, and everybody we all orchestrated responsibilities. And I had a volunteer coach, Aaron Rouser, was putting together 9-page scouting reports on both teams that we're getting ready to play if we win, and I've got a pitching coach, Scott Harold, who handles a lot of our pitching but also coaches our JV team, and Coach Harold is letting me know pitch counts and who's available, and this guy does this, he throws that, this guy's a fastball change guy, this guy, and so it's just things that when you're in the heat of it as a head coach, like you said, there's so much going on that to have assistants that buy in and accept a role and do what's best for the program and not worried about their own egos is everything. It's everything.
No question.
So grateful.
No question.
Absolutely.
We spoke about junior generals. 2 names I want to bring up, Charlie Gardner, Jet Smith. Somehow, with all the JVA, JVB, varsity, there were sophomores last year who not only played on varsity but made a huge impact. Coach Graven, how does a player like Charlie make you a better coach?
Charlie is a type of player that stepped in her freshman year and made an impact right away. Charlie's a great utility player. I mean, we put her in every position possible to see where our program needed or what fit our program needed her to play. But we have players like Charlie that want to compete at the highest level, and they want to be pushed, and they want to make an impact. And you can tell just by her tenacity in the gym, her swings that she's been taking here in the preseason, open gyms and tournaments. But Charlie does an amazing job on the court, front and back row. She's an unforgettable player. Sometimes you play teams and we tell our girls, make an impact, play big, and be unforgettable. After a team plays us, they make sure that they know your name because you're making that big of an impact. But she's a 6 rotation player, and she doesn't come off the floor, and that's a big deal in volleyball. And you have to be steady, you have to respond and bounce back, and not let one play, determine the rest of the outcome. So Charlie is a very important part of our program's success.
Coach Donley, I don't want to ask you too much about roster construction because you're still celebrating a state title, but to know you have a guy in Jet Smith who you told me he probably doesn't even know the impact he had in that state title game, but to see him coming back and to see him and knowing that he's going to have a bigger role, how much ease does that give you as a coach heading into next spring?
Yeah, a lot of teams are good in the middle, right? Like if you look at football teams, center, quarterback, running backs, the D-line, linebackers. If you look at baseball, pitching, catching, middle infield, center fielder, if you're strong in the middle, you give yourself a chance. And finding Jet this past year and the success he was able to have for us behind the plate, defensively, number one, was most important. And, a funny story about Jet, this is actually a testament to him and the young man that he is and his parents for raising him the way they have is, Jet didn't even make our spring trip. He wasn't ready. He was varsity capable. He wasn't varsity ready. And so when we took our team to Myrtle Beach during spring break, Jet didn't make that travel roster. It was a 20-man roster. And then when we got back, our first league game back, we were still trying to figure out what our everyday catching situation was going to be. And we dressed him at Fremont Ross on an away game. I think he threw the first base stealer out and went 2 for 3 with a double and on the bus ride home from Fremont. And it was a gross, cold, one of those stupid early April spring games. But he performed, and the moment never seemed too big for him. And he went from being able to handle, low to mid 80s to now he's handling mid to upper 80s, low 90s with our varsity staff and doing it with great success, and evident in our state final game. First at bat, sophomore, leads off an inning, the second inning with a double off the right field wall. Just big moments. It just never was too big for Jet, and even little things like getting sack bunts down in the walk-off wins against Loveland, I think, and then Walsh also. Jet got a set. So having someone like that coming back, who'll be a junior, to handle our pitching staff, I really expect him to continue to make strides in his game, not only physically, but as a leader as well.
And Coach Williams, when we talk about veterans, the first name that comes to mind is Elila Simon. She had such an impact last year. She was an All-Ohio player. What is it about the anatomy of a great player that allows you to maybe coach her in a way that you can't coach other players?
Yeah, I think Lila has literally a heart of a champion. I think that her senior class that she has with her, so we're expecting to have 7 girls, as seniors, and they're all very competitive, and they definitely have a different level on game day. Than they practice very hard, and there's some times where we actually have to peel them back a bit at practice. But in all honesty, like she exemplifies in a lot of ways that whole senior class, just the way Lydia plays and Addie Doriot does. And I just see a really, really cohesive senior group that plays for each other, but also just wants to win for each other and wants to compete. And so I think that, she's the one that gets a lot of the goals, but wouldn't be able to do so without Briley. And, some of the girls that senior class just really love to compete.
And we're going to wrap with a little rapid fire,
Uh-oh.
but journalists always love long, drawn-out answers. Just a disclaimer, I promise I won't ask who your favorite player was. I might have a different way of saying it, but I won't flat out ask. So, Coach Graven, we'll start with you. The player that most reminds you of yourself when you were a player at Anthony Wynne?
In our current team?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Another disclaimer. You have to have coached them in your current role, so it can't be wrestling or any other sport. And it can be past or present.
Oh my goodness, rapid fire.
For lack of a better term, you could take your time with it.
She's gonna kill me for saying this, but Leah Pike is. I relate a lot to her just from a mental standpoint and competitive standpoint. But I think we're wired pretty similar, and I know she's gonna roll her eyes when she sees this. Because we're very structured. We're very, we like to have a standard and follow that, and we think through things thoroughly, and obviously we want to win and compete, but just the way we go about it is very methodical, and so I relate to her a lot. See myself in that, years ago, but I would say she comes to mind, and just off the cuff.
All right, Coach Donley, hard act to follow.
Yeah.
You got 3rd place in the state wrestling championships in 2000 at 189 pounds. Wrestled for Clay. Which baseball player that you've coached could beat that version of you on the mat? None.
In wrestling?
Yes, wrestling.
No, none of them kids can beat me in wrestling.
None of them. All right, fine. All right.
No, I'm teasing. No, I don't know. I don't know if. I think
No, you
really,
already said none. I think you believe
Tommy
it.
Ling was the only one that would have been, I want to say, close to my weight class. Let's leave it like that. I think Tommy Ling a couple years ago in 23, Tommy Ling, but he and I wrestled a ton every day, so he knows the result of that.
All right, say no more. Coach Williams, the player that would make the best coach.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I would argue Danny Homeyer. So she's was a student coach for us for the last 3 years. Had an injury that set her.
Okay.
Well,
So-
she had an injury that didn't allow her to play anymore. So we actually added her to our staff 3 years ago, and then she was with us for 3 years. There's so many. We have a ton of former players that are actually coaching now. Shelby Harrington and Sydney Harrington have both joined the Koichi ranks, and so many others. Taylor Billings has coached, and so many of our players have been kind of got that itch, and then life changes and families happen and things of that nature. But we have girls that are already in that avenue.
So I'll follow up with that one. In your all-time starting 11, who gets the captain bin?
For me, I would say Taylor Leach. So she is the most competitive person I've ever coached. So I remember a game back her senior year. She slide tackled the ball away from a girl in a district semifinal, and the girl thought it was a dirty play, and she came back, and Taylor stood up, and the other young lady took Taylor out, and she stood up and she said, "I think she's going to kill me," to her coach. And I said, she might. I would probably encourage you to get your young lady out who just took out my player. To me, she exemplifies a captain in her competitiveness, but also in her ability to get people to follow her lead. Everybody wanted to be great for her and because of her. But I would say that it would be Taylor Leach, who's currently coaching at the University of South Carolina women's soccer team.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Coach Graven, the player that reminds you most of why you fell in love with coaching.
Oh, Emily Leidy, and it's not an Anthony Wayne kid.
That's
that
fair.
okay?
That's fair. That's fair. Feel free to elaborate.
Yeah, I coached her. She was a setter. I coached her at TVC, Toledo Volleyball Club. Just a great kid, very coachable. We, clicked, and she went on to play at Michigan State. And just sometimes you just have really good chemistry with a kid, and so just a really fun player to watch and develop.
All righty, Coach Donley, state championship game. You're down 3-2, bottom of the 7th, 2 outs. Who do you want at the plate?
Oh, man, that's tough. I don't know if I have an answer for that one, Yaw. I don't know.
One guy.
One
guy for all the glory.
Oh, man. This year or across the board?
Across the board, all the baseball players you've coached. At Anthony Wynn.
Jack Bainfeld.
Why?
Because in 23, every time we got up to the plate, Jack Bainfeld he was super competitive. He was an emotional leader for us. He very rarely struck out, and the moment was just never too big for Jack. And he just did things the right way. I would go to war with Jack Bainfeld any day of the week. And so if the ship was going to sink or swim, or sink or float, Jack at the controls, I'd feel good about that chance. So I'm going Jack Bainfeld.
Same question for all of you here. Coach Graven, we'll start with you. The one player on your current team that would make the best anchor for BCSN.
Make the best anchor for BCSN. Probably Charlie Gardner. She's a storyteller.
Now we know who we're going to interview for volleyball previews. Thank you very much. Coach Williams?
Oh, man. We have all kinds of personality. I would say Lydia Schmucker. She's always on aux, so she's always running. So she's always running our music, and just kind of is a person who's able to collect everybody together and really, rally the troops, for lack of a better way of saying it. But I think she would ask the right questions and get really good answers.
Coach Donley, what's the type of music that your players like to play at practice?
It changes. So it kind of depends on the mood. They go a little bit everything from 90s country to hip hop.
A little Party in the USA.
Sometimes, yep. The pop anthems, all that stuff. They mix it up quite a bit. So.
And which player would best be in this chair? Current player.
Current player? Oh, that's a good question. I would say, Owen Graff would have been good. He just graduated. I don't know if that counts, but Owen would have been a good one. He likes to talk. He certainly likes to talk. I would go with Owen.
All right, final one. Coach Graven, we'll start with you. One player going under the radar that all of Toledo should pay attention to this upcoming season.
Taylor Wilson. She'll be a sophomore in our program, and lights out on defense. So she's a back row player, but solid. She would have been a freshman starter in any other program, but obviously we had Ryan Gerwa and Jesse Kennelly on varsity. So Taylor she plays for one of the best club programs in the area, and she does some amazing things back in the backcourt.
All right, Coach Williams, who should we take notice of?
I think probably Briley Schermerhorn. Left backs don't get a lot of love. And
they really don't.
They don't score a lot of goals. Briley does. So Briley was actually our third in total points of the season for goals and assists as a left back. But she's also a really strong defender to kind of accompany that. So I would say, she's one that, her name's not going to always be in the newspapers, but I'm looking for her to have a really big breakout year.
And Coach Donley, I won't ask you that because the spring is months away, but just for the audience, the best celebration you had over the state title?
On the bus right after the game on the way back to the hotel. And then the welcome back into town was pretty special. Thank you to White House PD and Fire in Waterville, Monclova. It seemed like everybody was there to welcome us back into town. But no, the kids carried a speaker with them everywhere. So when we got on the bus at whatever time it was, 2 o'clock in the morning after the game in Akron, when they got on the bus and cranked the speaker up, it was pretty special.
All right, there you go. What a treat. if I was a betting man, I'm not a betting man, and I'm not promoting betting, but if I was, I would bet on all three of you winning Coach of the Year again. So thank you guys so much for taking the time. Baseball head coach Ryan Donley, volleyball head coach Chrissy Graven, and girls soccer head coach Laura Williams. Thank you guys so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.